Okay, we're live and getting started. So we'll wait a moment to see if anyone joins us. But yes, are you guys excited for today?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, looking forward to having a good chat.
Good, good. I know Claire's now a veteran of the live streams now.
I wouldn't go that far.
Definitely getting there, Claire.
I'm getting
Compared to this time
slowly.
a couple of months ago even, you've come on leaps and bounds.
What a difference, isn't there?
Well, if you think by the time we finished all the Giving Tuesday ones, Claire, you'll be an expert.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Be hosting yourself, you will. And yeah. How are you guys feeling? Scott, you've been on one already, haven't you? You'd come on the Giving Tuesday team one.
Yeah, I've been on one night.
Getting there.
And I think I've been on one or two, I think.
I feel like two, Willie, but I'm not sure which ones other than the Giving Tuesday team. I'm drawing a blank, but I also feel like it was two.
William, you should be an expert at this stuff.
Oh, I'm used to this now. I just wing it most of the time, mate, but yeah.
You've got more experience than all of us put together, I think, well, haven't you?
Oh, I don't know, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. People will be getting sick of hearing my voice.
Oh, well. There we go. Oh, someone's joined us. Not sure who yet. Please do say hi in the comments, guys. Good to see who's there. And I'll do all the disclaimers in a minute. I think we'll give people just a moment to get the notification on their phone as we started early.
Show us you care, folks. Give us a share.
Definitely.
And can please somebody share it into my support group if they're watching, please?
Yeah.
Get it into all the right groups. Really important. Always get a great turnout though with other people who are keen to share their own experiences and bring their own expertise to the table like you guys are doing. So it's always really, what's the word? I want to say inspiring, but that's not quite what I mean. A mix between inspiring and motivating to see so many people show up. But anyway, I think I'll get started with the disclaimers and mention things. So today we are going to be touching on quite heavy subject matter and looking at substance abuse and the effects of this within your own lives and the lives of people around you. Therefore, for me, for you guys, for anyone who's watching or in the comments, please do keep an eye on how you're feeling. Check in with yourself. If you need to take a minute, step back, take a few deep breaths, go get something to drink, take a minute, and look after yourself. And you can always reach out to us on the 7030 page as well if you want to drop us a message and touch base afterwards. And yes, to all you three, if at any moment you don't want to answer something or you want to take a step back, just, mention it to me, drop me a private message if you need to, and that's absolutely no worries. So yeah, I'll jump in and get started, and I will mute the rest of us once we're sharing. Who wants to go first and share a little bit about their own history with this subject and their own experiences?
Go on, I'll go first, Isabel.
Go ahead. I'll mute everyone else then, including myself.
Hiya, yeah, so I'm Claire. I've been I was a drug addict for over 25 years. I've got 17 months sober. It started when I was quite young. I think I was smoking by the age of about 9. Then it went on to drinking and then smoking marijuana. And then it moved from that to class A drugs, amphetamine, ecstasy tablets. And then about 15 years ago, I got addicted to heroin. And I was on heroin for 13 years, I think it was in total. And then at the end of those 13 years, I also became addicted to crack cocaine. So yes, I've had a very long history with substance abuse, and it's been one of the hardest journeys of my life. So yeah, that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Thanks, Claire. And is there anything particular you want to mention at the start here before you move on to anyone else? Something that you think is essential that people know about this issue?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on in Wales at the moment that I would like to draw attention to, if that's okay with you, Isabel.
Yes, I'm just going to say hi to Andy, who's just joined us as well first, but then go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, so as you know, Scotland has got the highest death rates for drugs at the moment, and Wales comes a close second to that. In a new public health report in Wales, the drug deaths are at their highest ever levels, and they have actually grown 84% in the last 10 years. Drug-related deaths were up by 5% in 2019 from the previous year, and sadly, the number of people that lost their lives to drugs was a total of 74,511 people, and that was recorded on the 18th of May this year. As in previous years, opioids and heroin were involved in just over half of those deaths, and then the other 41% in Wales include death from benzodiazepines, cocaine and fentanyl. So yeah, I just think that awareness really needs to be spread. Obviously, the more we talk about these issues, the more we can get our stories heard. And I just think it's really sad that in 2021, we're still no better, if not worse, than we were 10 years ago.
Those are some shocking numbers. I think I'll unmute Will and Scott in a second to get some reactions from them off those numbers, because those
shocking.
are mind-blowing, really. And I just wanted to bring in a couple of the statistics that we always quote in our infographics and things that we share, and that's kind of the link between substance abuse and ACEs. And we tend to see that things like people who have 4+ ACEs 11 times more likely use intravenous drugs. And beyond that, we see the impact of protective factors for people with ACEs. You know, people with ACEs who don't have an always available adult in their childhood are 3 times more likely to be heavy drinkers and heavy smokers than people with the same number of ACEs, but with support. So, you know,
can I just add to that as well, Isabel, just one last little thing.
Go ahead.
The treatment in Wales at the moment for drug misuse costs is approximately £500 million a year. And in England, the cost of alcohol misuse is at a whopping £3.5 billion a year. If we can get that prevention in early and spread that awareness, the amount of money that would be saved every year on these costs that are going out for people on prescriptions, on opiate replacements, on alcohol replacement medication, there would be so much money saved. And that amount of money that I researched this week and found out how much it actually was, it's just so shocking to me. I just, you know, it just blew me away, to be honest.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hi, Michelle, in the comments as well. I mean, I don't think I can fully visualize that quantity of money that could go towards prevention and support in other ways. I know in similar news this morning, I was looking at a BBC article about the number of children in care increasing and the amount that was going to cost local authorities. You know, prevention saves money in a huge way and then allows you to reinvest it in support that actually works.
And can I say to that, most of those children who are in care have probably been brought up in those environments as a child. So that goes to show how many people are actually affected by this every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Will, Scott, do you have anything to say on what Claire said before I let you share your own stories?
I just think it's absolutely shocking, the stats that we're seeing for all the different countries in the UK. Scotland being the highest of the lot, with 1,339 poor souls lost to drug-related deaths last year. And of that 1,339, not a particularly Scottish problem, but these fake Valium were accountable for 974 of these deaths. That's a subject very close to my heart, as I'm on day 674, 20 months roughly of my own personal recovery. And I think it's important when we're talking about addiction. It's a massive issue, and there is such a stigma still surrounding so many issues regarding addiction and drug misuse and all the different things that go along with that. But through 90-odd% of addiction issues is trauma related. Now, whether that's your adverse childhood experiences, like we've all suffered, myself suffering from physical and mental abuse, as well as parents who are in a volatile relationship, divorce, parents splitting up. My dad was an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic, and growing up in the 70s and 80s, I couldn't talk to anybody about any experience like abuse that I was suffering at that time, or what was going on with my mum and dad. When I was going out around to outside with my friends and what have you, almost every single one of them, 4 out of every 5 of them, were going through similar issues in their home. And it was definitely a generational thing. I mean, I know, looking back to my own personal experience with my father, he was abused as a child as well, like physically and mentally. He was brought up with strict parents, and he wasn't strong enough to break that cycle. It doesn't make what he done to me correct or to my mother correct, but there's bigger issues here than the addiction. We have to go back to the very beginning and go back to everybody's traumas that they've been through and look to try and prevent these traumas, like adverse childhood experiences, from happening in the first place where possible.
Yeah.
And to do that, that's by creating a trauma-informed society. And for example, a little example, the people that know me, I had a 27-year-long addiction to mostly prescription painkillers, dihydrocodone, which is an opiate tablet, and diazepam. Also gabapentin, which is another opiate tablet, and crack cocaine in my latter stages in my long addiction. But when I got into recovery, there was no support out there whatsoever. And when I tried, before I got into recovery, 2 months before it, I went to my doctor, and it took me a lot of time to build up the courage to speak to my doctor and to open up about how I was feeling. But I told my doctor that I was suicidal, and at that precise moment, I was taking upwards of between 50 and 100 of these fake Valium. And if it wasn't them that was going to kill me, I thought, what was the point? I was in a really bad place. So I reached out to the doctor for help and says, could you please put me back on my prescription for 2 or 3 normal Valium, so it takes the chance of me dying with these fake killer tablets away. Because the answer I got for the doctor shocked me, because they're there to take care of people, to help people recover, to make people better if you want. And they refused me my right to recovery, because the words I got back from the doctor was, no, sorry, our hands are tied because of this non-benzo policy. So what I'd rather you done was go out and buy 49 of these killer tablets one day, go out and buy 48 the next, 47 the next, and do it that way. Because if you do come off them right away, there's a high chance that you could have a fit, a seizure, a heart attack, and die. Now, it takes a lot for people to open up and say that they're struggling in everyday life, never mind to say they're suicidal. So when I got that response from the doctor, it was only a month later that I tried to commit suicide last February. Thankfully, it never worked. But my point being is, it takes a lot for people to build up that courage to open up to others, especially when they're lowest and at their most vulnerable. And when you do that and you get that response from someone who's meant to be there to help you, to heal you if you want, then you sort of lose all hope. Yeah. Thankfully, my overdose never worked, but that happens every single day up and down our lands in Britain. All over it happens. If it's not that, it's somebody dying because of these fake bloody diazepam. They're up and down the land. That is the second pandemic. It's called the blue plague, we call it in Scotland. And where it gets its high mortality rate is because of polydrug use. So maybe people are using heroin or crack cocaine or methadone or whatever it is, but they're also using these fake Valium as well. And there's things really strong, potent, like painkillers in there, like fentanyl, atizolam, that it only takes one of these tablets to kill you. So when I got through the other side of my addiction, that's why I started up the peer support group and got involved with the peer support network.
Yeah, really, I'm just going to stop you for 2 seconds, not because of your timing, but because I see a message in the chat about being triggered. Some of you may have joined later on. So if you are having a moment, we're talking about very personal things that might relate to you, might relate to people you know, or you might have strong opinions about. So if this does affect you in any way, please do take a step back, take a few deep calming breaths. That can often be enough to take you out of it. If it isn't, get up, go for a walk, get a glass of water. If that isn't enough still, take 5 minutes, maybe drop us a message. message the 7030 campaign. If you're someone who knows one of us directly, you can message us on Messenger as well, and we'll follow it up to it. Do make sure to look after yourself. We're talking about very triggering situations, rightly so. So if we're looking for a trauma-informed society, we need to be trauma-informed ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah.
So please do take care of yourselves. And yes, sorry, Willie, I just thought that was very much worth saying if the comments were coming up. And
Of course it is, yes.
thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think very glad that you're still here and that you have come out on the other side of such a difficult situation. And I definitely want to circle back to getting the support and the kind of experiences you had there, but also, as you say, the impact of suicide and deaths and overdoses around that. So I think we're going to circle round to that properly in a moment.
No bother.
Have you got a final comment to say before I let Scott take over as I interrupt?
I would just like to say that there's peer support systems up and down the land. Claire's got a group, I've got a group. Our good friends and fellow ambassadors, Jay and Angela Haston, have ACE Awareness, which is a group specific to adverse childhood experiences. So we're all in a position where we've got a lot of people in our groups that we can signpost members to if they need specific help. But what I would like to say before I pass over to Scott, it shouldn't be left down to peer support groups.
No, it shouldn't.
People like doctors, people in power and government, etc., they're there to take care of us. They're there to take care of the public and people, and they're not doing their job correctly, in my opinion. That's just what I want to say anyway.
I agree. I totally agree with you on that one, Willie. I really do.
Fully, definitely. And I think we'll get into how to make that happen in a moment, because I think that's what we're doing as a campaign, is we need to make sure that the right support is in place. So we will circle back to that one in a bit more detail. Scott, do you want to share as well? I just need to let the cat out in the background in the meantime, but I'll let you get started as well if you have any comments on what Claire was saying or on your own experience as well, as I know Will shared a bit of his experience there.
Yeah. So I'm Scott, and I came into recovery in September 2019. I'm just over 2 years clean, and the stuff that it's took me a while to learn this, but the reason I used drugs for a very young age, 22, 23 years, the addiction to methadone, diazepam, heroin, you name it, I took it because I didn't like the person I was through adverse child experiences. I had like family that was an uncle, God bless him, passed away, heroin addict. Another uncle who was an alcoholic, another couple was alcoholics. So I just kind of followed suit. I just looked up to them like role models, and I just followed suit. And it was all through untreated trauma. Now I know that. I wish I'd have knew that back then. And it took me down horrible routes in and out of prison system, in and out sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I tried to hang myself before they would actually get me help. And eventually they realised I was being serious and they got me treatment. And that's a good thing about paying money for treatment for somebody in treatment, because we come out of treatment and we start helping others. There's William, for example, Claire. They've got peer support groups. So we come out and start making an impact in the community off our own personal backs. And we do this time and time again, but it shouldn't take people like us to go and have to open up these groups to get support. It's quite shocking. And what Claire was speaking about, and William was speaking about, the drugs, 1,340 odd deaths in Scotland. We've just had a pandemic, which, how is drugs not a pandemic? Where is it no a pandemic? Because it is. We're absolutely plagued by dodgy drugs, Valium, for instance, for one. All the stuff that's cut through, all the drugs, and it's like playing Russian roulette. The amount of people, I've had over 150 friends, family that's passed away since I came into treatment in September 2019, and I'm having families asking me, why did they not stop? It's not as easy as that. So that's why I'm passionate about this campaign, because see, if we get to the root of the problem, let's treat the trauma as it comes up. Let's treat them as they're coming out of school, as they're coming out of college. And rather than wait until they're using alcohol or drugs like we did to cure an internal problem, let's treat the internal problem. Let's get them counselling. Let's get them signposted to the right places. And that's why I'm passionate about this place, because 90% of people, I'm quite lucky, I'm working in a treatment centre now, the one that I was a resident of, and 90% of the people I work with is all trauma related, untreated trauma, and they've never had the support, they've never had counselling, they've never had any guidance. So let's treat it as it comes up. Let's get to the root of the problem instead of waiting until the next generation becomes addictions, alcoholics, whatever it is. God forbid, suicide. I've just had another friend today text me his nephew killed himself because of untreated trauma. He didn't have any help. I had another guy I supported the other day there. He's just out of the Royal Edinburgh Hospital trying to kill himself because of untreated trauma. There is no help out there. It's sad. It's sad, and I'm getting texts 2, 3, 4 times a week of people looking for help, and it's a sad reality. In the place we live in now, there's not enough help.
And I think you've touched on something there, Scott, about people who have one type of vulnerability are often vulnerable to more trauma. So, for example, with yourselves, having had that experience, first of all, you're often in contexts in which access to those drugs was possible, other people were using and you know those people, but beyond that, in the role now of peer support, you're finding even more. And I feel that that means that you've got that further access to the trauma of seeing people you know be lost to suicide, be lost to drugs, etc. And I think we have to also look at the risk of being re-traumatized in different ways. You know, it's not just your own individual stories with substance abuse that can affect you. It's the people around you as well being affected by it in that sense. So definitely, I do send out as much support as possible to all of you and to anyone in the comments as well who are having to watch other people struggle when they know exactly what it means to be struggling in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Now I've got a few questions for you, so I'm just trying to prioritize here. I think to give it the right time, I'm going to dive into one of the most important ones. And that is, what do you guys feel about the stigma around substance abuse? There's a few different ways in which you can look at this, and I will let you guys decide what makes the most sense for you. One of them might be the difference between alcohol, smoking, and different drugs. One might be the difference that meeting people who didn't stigmatize made, for example, peer support groups, etc. And another might be, how do we need to tackle stigma to be able to change things in future? You can also approach it from any other way you think is relevant, but these are just a few of the questions that have come to my mind that I would love to hear from you guys on. I'm getting some feedback, so who wants to go? And then I will mute other people.
Yeah, I'll go.
Go ahead.
So, see, I've come across a lot of people in my past that they're too scared to speak up because they're too scared to get bullied through being labelled an addict, an alcoholic. They're too scared to bring it up in front of their family because, see, the generation from when I was grew up, you were taught to shut up, don't show no fear, don't show no emotion. What goes in the house stays in the house. And it's drummed into us from a very young age. Don't tell the social work nothing, don't tell the police nothing, which I know is rubbish now. And they're scared the backlashes for their family. And it's sad. And that's why we use our voices to speak out. I've been on news articles, I've been on BBC News, I've been on papers, I've been on radio channels trying to break the stigma. We do campaigns, you keep talking, we keep dying. We do all sorts of stuff like that to break the stigma, because we need to use our voices of lived experience to show people that you can get through it, and it doesn't matter. Certain people are just stuck in the past, and that's up to them, to be fair. But we need to use our voices to speak out, to try and break the stigma. for the next generation coming up.
Fully agree there. And I think it's quite interesting what you're saying about different generations, Scott. I think every generation has a slightly different approach to these problems. And I don't think we've come to one that has gotten rid of stigma yet, unfortunately. But I very much hope that through breaking these intergenerational cycles, we will get to a generation who sees this issue for what it is, which is often a reaction to traumatic events. In fact, reaction isn't even the right word, an adaptation to cope with traumatic events. And you guys can perhaps describe it differently or back that up. But I've definitely seen many of the cases face.
Yeah, definitely.
Will, Claire, who wants to jump in? Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it was more like shame and embarrassment and what are people going to think of me? And there's a lot of labels you get attached to you when you're a drug addict, junkie. You know, there's some harsh words out there. And I think for me, I didn't want to embarrass my kids. I didn't want to embarrass my family. And I was just totally self-loathing and I really just hated myself. You know, I just didn't want to be doing it, but I couldn't see a way out. And I just think the peer support groups are such a wonderful tool because you've got people like us who are in there 2 years clean under our belts, you know, each. And when you see the newbies come and they're just starting out and they don't know how to even begin their journey, luckily they've got our stories and us to help inspire them. You know, everything works differently for people. Some person may do the 12 steps, NACA, some person may have to go to treatment. But when you put all of those tools together that we've all got between us, I think it's just totally priceless.
Absolutely, Claire. Have you got one message for people who don't currently see a way out? If this video finds its way across someone who's in the thick of it right now, if you could go back to yourself when you didn't see a way out, is there one thing you'd say?
Yeah, don't give up. Don't ever give up, you know, fight. Even if you get through one day and then you use the next day, get back on the wagon, keep trying. You know, I had hundreds of relapses in the last year. And then one day I woke up and said no more. And I think it's a process and you have to go through certain steps to be able to get to where I am now. Like a year and a half ago, there's no way I could have done this meeting. It would have been a massive trigger. By the end of it, I probably would have wanted to go and buy drugs. But luckily for me, now I'm past that stage. I've learned how to deal with those triggers. And it's really about learning who you are as a person. Because I think when you take drugs for such a long time, you lose yourself. You don't know who you are. You don't like yourself. You don't know what you want. You don't know where you're going. You just can't see any light for the darkness to surround you. So yeah, my message would just be, don't give up. There is hope. Look at us, you know, we're out the other side after 25 years, 28 years, you know, it's possible. You can do it.
Very powerful stuff, Claire. Thank you so much for sharing. Will, I'll let you jump in as well now.
No bother. I mean, that's the main reason why we've got our peer support groups. Unfortunately, the downside of it a little bit is with my peer support group, I've had to make it private for exactly that reason. We're all here telling our stories of our own voices of lived experience in the hope of breaking that stigma, in the hope of reaching somebody else that's suffering from addiction or poor mental health to show them that there is a way out and that you do recover. Because it wasn't until I got into the support network system, the support groups, etc., I'd gave up in society. I'd tried to reach out throughout the end stages of my addiction, the last 2 or 3 years of my addiction. I gave you an example of that earlier on, reaching out to the doctors. I'd reached out to a health visitor, to the social work department. I reached out to the social work department on behalf of my family, and I'm not going into it too deeply, but that ended up with a 4-year-long ordeal. That the social work department caused more trauma than what we had actually been through, maybe, or the same amount. It definitely didn't help at all. But it's all about connection. They say the opposite addiction is connection, and that's what we're finding out throughout our support networks, whether it's Claire's group, whether it's mine and Scott's group, Our Willies, or whether it's ACE Awareness with Jay and Angela. it's shown people come in, and a lot of them in our age groups especially didn't really know about adverse childhood experiences. I know I never knew too much about them, or that expression for them anyway. I go back even a year ago, and it's only by becoming an ambassador and doing the training in that way, and Jay and Angela and other friends throughout the group, that you find out more about yourself and you can work through that. So I think it's almost a duty for, we feel anyway, us three, because we came through the other side of that addiction, to just sort of like reach back and show other people that it is possible. And what our support groups allows to happen is, if people are waiting, say, which is happening more and more often these days, up to 2 years, but to get counselling, etc., or whatever, how can you ask somebody that's in the lowest place mentally, or with addiction or whatever, to wait 2 more years? So the peer support networks are bursting to the seams with people like that, getting the support and the friendships and the connections that they need to maybe see them through until they get their counselling. So it's really, really important. And in the meantime, we all just do as much as we can to try and spread awareness, whether it be these fake Valium or mental health, whatever it may be.
Yes, really, everything you've said resonated so strongly, and you just made me fully visualize a slide that we always use in our trauma-informed training, which is the key principles of being trauma-informed. And in that graphic that I don't have to hand, unfortunately, there's one circle in the middle, and then all of the principles are overlapping it. And at the center is relationships. Healing happens through the relationships. All of the other elements happens in relationships. What you said there about the opposite of addiction is connection, I could not agree more. It's absolutely essential to have the support of other human beings. And that doesn't always mean, you know, the deepest relationship in the world, or they have to be the main person in your life. It just means having a genuine human connection with someone you come into contact with. It means having someone who believes in you. It means having, you know, a conversation with someone who sees you as a human being, is willing to be empathetic, doesn't stigmatize, and is willing to work with you from where you're at. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Will. I think that's extremely useful. And I'll see if I can find the visual as well to share on our 70/30 page at some point, because that would be extremely useful, I think. Before I jump into the next question, I just wanted to say, if anyone has any questions, please do drop them in the chat. We're going to go with the live for about another 15 minutes. So put anything you want to ask people in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on it, and we'll bring that up or interrupt the discussion if that's more important than what we're covering at the moment as well. And if we don't get round to it in time on the live, we can always answer it in the comments later, as I'm sure all of us will go back and have a look. Or, you know, you can message the page with it again, or someone else in the comments will have experience themselves, even if they're not officially involved. So please do ask away in the comments. My next question, which I think is one that you've all touched upon, is how these issues are dealt with. What support was there for you? What support wasn't there? And I think we've covered the peer support groups quite well, so I'd ask to focus on other areas if possible. And what should have been in place? What can we do? What are we fighting to put in place? And I'm going to, Willie, go ahead.
We need trauma-informed doctors, we need trauma-informed social workers, teachers, janitors, everywhere. We need every single person worldwide, but we're talking about Britain here, Britain-wide, to become trauma-informed, to know how to deal with somebody that maybe has addiction issues or mental health issues, to be a non-judgmental. That's where we shine best in the peer support system. We don't judge each other. People are coming into our peer support groups and they're thinking, wow, I'm not alone. It may be different kinds of experiences we've had, but we've got so many similar feelings and emotions because of those experiences, whether it be adverse childhood experiences or other types of trauma. I never actually taken my first drug until I was 21, and that was after the passing of my daughter. And then even then, it was because after I'd been through all my adverse childhood experiences, and I had a relationship ending, my gran passed away, I had no home, all of that combined, and that's why I started abusing drugs. I started off drinking every single night, but it never took long before moving on to drugs, etc., because there was no support out there. And then if you fast forward through a long 27 years of addiction, and when I was trying to reach out for help yet again, there was no one there to help me. I got blocked at every opportunity. I got told, because of a non-benzo policy, they were telling me to go out and buy these deadly tablets off the street. Now, surely to God, people in authority, like doctors in the government, they can't just pass the buck like that and blame each other about you can't get help because you've got an addiction, or you can't get help with your addiction because you've got mental health issues. We need to trauma inform the whole of society, and starting at the people that can have the most impact, like the doctors, like our MPs, MSPs, like the teachers, etc., etc. And it's not until we start doing that and keep talking out, like we all do, as much as we possibly can, about all the different aspects that there is when you're talking about addiction and trauma, etc. We need to keep doing that and try and even push even further, try and get more ambassadors on board, get into the places that's needing it, into youth clubs, into schools, all places like that, and spread the message and try and break the stigma, because people shouldn't have to, like we touched on, going to peer support groups, but these groups in turn shouldn't have to be private because people don't want to be judged or called junkies or whatever. There should be a safe space to be able to talk, and that's where the peer support groups do come in, I suppose. But aye, we need to spread awareness whenever we can.
Absolutely. And there's just a couple of things I wanted to pick up on there, Willie. One that you were saying, again, touching on the stigma again with junkies, and something I forgot to say earlier, is the stigma is inherently part of the mindset of what's wrong with you. When people classify people as addicts, as junkies, etc., there's automatically that division of what's wrong with you and a step back from the other person in that situation. Whereas when you shift it to what happened to you, it's impossible to see it from the perspective of an addict or a junkie. You just see a human being who is coping in whatever way they can, or is asking for help, or has had, experiences that have led to that situation. And you might be able to see that you can't deal with them in the way you would like to in that moment in time because they're not in the headspace to do so, but you don't see it from the perspective of stigma. And the other thing I want to say is something that Claire has flagged up in one of our previous lives and is always worth bringing back, and that is that people often deal with one symptom separately from the whole picture. As you were saying, deal with the mental health but not with the addiction but not the mental health, with this and not. And especially when there's one underlying cause, which is trauma, that just does not work. And it's part of the reason why good communication between organizations is key in a trauma-informed community, because you have to be able to look at all sides of the problem.
That's exactly it. That's why we need a trauma-informed society, so that we can cut through this red tape. It's ridiculous asking people to wait up to 2 years for counselling. Mm-hmm. It really is. How are people meant to live for 2 years in crisis mode? It's ridiculous.
I feel you on that, Willie, because that's just happened to me. I've been trying to get trauma therapy for so many years, and then they finally accepted me for it, and then I had a letter telling me I've got to wait another 2 years, but I'm going through it now. I don't need it in 2 years, I need it now. And it was the same through my own recovery. I went to rehab and I got put on an opiate replacement when all they had to do really was give me the treatment down in there and get me off everything. I then went on that opiate replacement for 2 years, reached out to over 150 services in Wales, and they put so much stress and pressure on my shoulders that it was just so unmanageable. And in the end, I just said, I don't want these tablets anymore. I don't want your help anymore. And I literally had to come home and lock myself in the house and go through a 3-week withdrawal. And that was a very traumatic experience in itself. And because of that, I now suffer with something called PAWS, which is post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which is basically from withdrawing from these drugs without medical supervision. So you basically can't win either way. You either do it yourself and risk losing your life or having all these issues forever, or you go to the doctors and you get turned away and you don't get any help.
That's it. I mean, people look at us, people look at you as being through, if you've got through a long addiction like we have, or we've come through trauma like we all have as well, people think, sorry, that's you healed, well done, congratulations, amazing. But it's an ongoing process. We have the consequences of all the years of addiction following us on, like Claire says there, with her PAWS, with IBS, with different other medical issues we all suffer from. So it's
And
okay.
it's not
Yeah,
even
we're
just
strong.
that
We've been
with it.
strong enough to get through.
You lose your family, you lose your friends. You know, I lost everything when I went through mine. I lost my home. I lost my sanity at one point.
Yeah.
It's a really painful, hard process to have to go through.
Definitely.
Especially when you're on your own.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to just jump in there just because we haven't got much time and I want to hear from Scott on this as well. But I do have quite a few thoughts on some great points that both of you have made. So we'll see if you have time at the end. And if not, we'll pick it up on a second live in a future time, I think. But Scott, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So, like, I totally agree with what Claire and William saying. Like, see me, right? I can only speak for me because it's my story, right? But I, as a person with untreated trauma, used drugs and alcohol to subdue, although it doesn't take it away, it numbs it for so long until that trauma gets too much that I try to hang myself. So if they'd have just got me the help I needed, the treatment for trauma I needed back then that could have saved a whole lot of money for prison. Like, for example, in and out of prison system, if I was 16, it could have saved a whole lot of money if they'd have just treated the stuff that I was crying out for. Now, I eventually did see psychiatrists and psychologists, and their answer was prescription drugs. And just got me addicted to something else. So not only was I left with untreated trauma, I was now left with an addiction to real diazepam, all the rest of it that comes along with it, all the medication, the trimol, all sorts of different antipsychotics and all that sort of stuff, rather than dealing with what was going on in here, the internal, because it was inside I was broken. That's the stuff what kept me going back to drinking, kept me going back to drugs to numb it, because I didn't like the person I'd become. I didn't like the stuff I'd seen. And I used that to numb me. And it ruined me, and it just about ruined my family. The stuff I've been through, the stuff I've put them through my untreated trauma, and they were the ones that were picking up the pieces, and it's a sad reality, and we're definitely lacking more counsellors, and 18 months to 2 year waiting list for trauma therapy is absolutely shocking, because some people can't last that long. Some people are just going to say enough's enough, and take their own life. One of my pal's nephews just done it because they couldn't wait that long for counselling, and it's really sad. And that's why we speak today about our past, because we need trauma informed. We need, as like William was saying, nurses, doctors, teachers, counsellors. We need total trauma informed for to pick up on these signs. And let's save the next generation, because I don't want my daughter to turn into an alcoholic or an addict because trauma she occurs in her life. Let's deal with it as it comes up.
And definitely, and I think all of you have touched on this in terms of it's too long to wait. And I'm just going to put you on mute there, Scott, because I'm getting some feedback. And I think it's worth looking at the distinction between having to put as much attention as possible at the absolute crisis moment and not leaving people hanging for so long. 2 years, you can get a master's degree in 2 years. You can do a huge, 2 years is not a short amount of time. But at the same time of making sure that you're stopping people from getting to that crisis mode. You shouldn't be just dealing with it when people are at the stage of taking their lives and then saying, oh, we'll maybe fit you in 2 years. You should be dealing with it before they're at that level. You should be dealing with it before they're addicted. You should be dealing with it before they have the mental health problems that lead them to the addiction. So, and I think trauma-informed communities are 100% something that does a lot of that work. So I'm really glad that you flagged that up. And I will say the only other thing that we haven't really mentioned today is the absolute primary prevention of, disrupting ACEs from the start, tackling the issue of ACEs from the start, and making sure that you're breaking that intergenerational cycle, which a lot of you have brought up, before it's passed on to the next generation. And from everything that you were saying, Claire, at the very beginning of the costs of all of this a pandemic, certainly a crisis, you've got to think of it from a funding perspective as well. We need that funding to be at the prevention stage and not, trying to plug holes in waiting lists at the last moment. So yeah, definitely. Now, unfortunately, we're nearing the end. I haven't spotted any questions in the comments, but I will have a quick double check. Not obviously. So I kind of want one final remark from each of you. If there's one take-home message for people, and I don't know who's listening, so it might be other people who are struggling with the same issues, it might be policymakers, it might be everyday public who's perhaps had a bit of a stigmatized view of the issue previously. So decide who your target audience is, maybe. But what's one key message you want to leave people with today? And I'll let Claire go first.
So my message would be to become trauma informed and be informed on ACEs, because until I became trauma informed 3 years ago and understood that I had ACEs and what was going on with me and my addiction and my mental health and everything else that comes along with it, that's when I started realizing who I was as a person, and that I can turn this around, how it's affected my own children, how it's been passed on to them, how I can fix it for them. And I think it's just important to remember that you are worth it. There is hope, and all you've got to do is reach out. And you could be signposted to somewhere else for help. But yeah, my message would be trauma informed is the way to go. I think we could save millions of lives if this actually kicks off. If we can get this in the early years, this could really make a difference in so many areas in the future. So yeah, that would be my message, that there is hope and don't give up.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire. And I just wanted to jump in quickly. I've seen some amazing stories being shared in the comments as well, and people having the bravery to match that of everyone that we have on the call today. So thank you, everyone, for sharing. And I do hope you find better support and better situations in future and reach out to support networks. Some of you already have, but having the courage to share that experience makes all the difference in the world. Scott, do you want to go next with a final comment?
Yeah. So my audience would be like, see if you've had adverse child experiences, if you've suffered trauma, if you're finding yourself using alcohol or drugs to numb the pain, don't give up. Don't give up. See, as long as you got hope. I had hope long time ago because I was in recovery before, but I hadn't dealt with the trauma got a hold of me again. But I always held on to that hope. And if me coming for 20 odd years of addiction in and out of prison services meant locked up in sections under the Mental Health Act, can change my life. Anybody can change their life. We suffer for a talking illness. We're taught to show no fear, show no emotion. Don't speak about that. Don't speak about that. It's all rubbish. So we need to speak. We need to speak out. We need to put our hand out. We need to speak to anybody, because that's what it's all about. It's about just having a bit of empathy, and supporting people through the hard times, because it can be tough. But I, as a person, can get through stuff I've got through and be sitting here over 2 years playing. Now I've got a job in a treatment centre. I was once arrested, and don't give up hope, because I can change my life. Any youth can change your life. So keep your chins up and drop us a text anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, as you both say, don't give up, and there is hope. Willie, I'm going to ask you to have a very quick ending, as unfortunately I do have to run off. But yeah, if you've got any final comments.
I'll keep it short and sweet. My target is the government, the Scottish government and the policymakers. They've recently announced in the last few months they're putting £250 million into addiction services, etc. in Scotland over the next 5 years. But when you break that down to over 30 councils in Scotland, it works out roughly about 8 million per council. Over 5 years, you do the maths, it's 1.5 million every year. Nowhere near enough. It's only putting a plaster on a gaping wound as usual. And we need to do more than that. We need to prevent ACEs from happening in the first place where we can. And the way we do that is by creating a trauma-informed society, to the top to the bottom, for the school headmistress to the school janitor and everybody else in between. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And short and sweet, absolutely. And as you say, it's not enough, you know, and we're pushing for it. So if anyone is listening to this, join us. Become a 70/30 ambassador, talk to people in your local community, make a difference where you can. And on that note, I think it's also worth mentioning that it's exactly 1 week till Giving Tuesday, and we're currently fundraising to support the 70/30 campaign to reach this goal, to make all of the UK a trauma-informed country. So if you can, please give anything that you're able to. You can donate at www.wavetrust.org, and you can also sign up to be an ambassador there, give your time, give your expertise, give your story. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for sharing in the comments, and thank you guys for being willing to share these stories that I know are difficult stories, but have the power to change lives. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.